This deck dominates that. And it looks like Connor Mullaly has been doing this at 5-1 here. Let me try to Daniel Johnson. Looks like Connor's kept. I'm unsure if it's a 7 or a 6. Kind of get a feel for that. Looks like a 7.
Yeah, you talk about fair magic, and Daniel Johnson is trying to do none of that. I would not associate show and tell and sneak attack with fair magic, as we're trying to cheat. Like I said, Atraxa into play, cast the One Ring, has access to some fast mana. There is, we look at 4 Lotus Petal, 1 Simian Spirit Guide, 3 City of Traitors, and 3 copies of Ancient Tomb, along with the kind of permission spells to help back that up. The Force of Will, Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm, and then your cantrips and Ponder and Brainstorm. So a very well-oiled machine here for Daniel. And, Connor maybe knows the matchup, maybe doesn't, but, the cards that Connor is really looking for, stuff like Force of Will, that's really the only kind of counter spells that Connor has in his main deck. There's, no copies of Dazes, no actual counter spells, none of that kind of stuff. And we're off to the races. We see Triome on turn 1. You love to see it.
It's so hard to believe that Xander's Lounge is a legacy card. It is just I see it, and it's going good. It makes some sense. 5 colors, you need to make the Triumphs work. But imagine telling people from a few years ago that in the Wasteland Days format you're going to play Triumphs and be pretty happy about it. We're going to see a fetch from Flooded Strand.
I want to see Connor fetch a Temple Garden here, just because he could be like, well, I just kind of forgot I accidentally shuffled my modern mana base into my legacy deck.
Yeah, didn't matter. Spells are great. We are going to see a Savannah. Domain is online. It does look like Connor did have one of those Force of Wills in hand. So
80 cards.
80 cards.
Yeah, that's the card that Connor is really looking for, because you can imagine, Swords to Plowshares, fine at removing an Atraxa from the battlefield so you don't take an attack. But if there's a, say a sneak attack and that puts Atraxa into play, even if you Swords to Plowshares that thing, Daniel's still going to be up 5 or 6 cards. So it's, you definitely want to kind of counter it on the way down as opposed to answering it on the battlefield.
Well, when we were trying to present the deck to cut, Daniel accidentally flipped the forest. Turns out Connor has, I think, an APAC forest there. And, Daniel's going to get a slight warning. We're going to put the forest back in the deck. It looks to be what the kids call an oopsie poopsie. And we'll just be moving on with our day. Luckily, it's just a forest, Connor was about to play an Up the Beanstalk. The jig was up that we have green in our deck. If Daniel's playing a bunch of Ghost Quarters, this could come up as pretty advantageous. Don't think Daniel is, but...
Our producer is now asking what kids say that. And to be fair, in Norm's defense, I don't really think I've ever heard of kids say that. So maybe it's the people that hang around Mason.
No, kids are saying that. I'm at the local mall. You go to the mall. Malls are pretty popping these days. Never heard of. Oh, we did it again. That's 2 warnings, Daniel. 1 more, you get a game loss, buddy. Watch out.
See, this is exactly how you just make sure you go to a tournament, you play new sleeves, and you just try to get your opponent. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's obviously an accident here from Daniel. 80 cards, probably double sleeved. Let's be honest. It's legacy. Cards ain't cheap. Oh my. Oh God, I can't. That's tough. Oh. That is tough.
Look, I mean, I cannot blame Daniel. It's really hard to shuffle 80 cards. Okay, yeah. I get it, especially new sleeves, double sleeve. Like, I get it. It's not the easiest thing, and honestly, part of the reason why Yorion was banned in Modern is the shuffling.
Yeah, it was dexterity error was a legit thing. Yeah, Connor's like, they're still on the table, man. We got to go back in my deck. This might be a situation we need to get the judge. And listen, it's all funny games here, Daniel. It is not the end of the world. These sort of mistakes do happen. In the words of Hannah Montana, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. We will live on our life. But these things do happen. Looks like, I imagine what's going to probably happen is we're just going to shuffle. And then maybe we'll get the judge to cut the deck. I'm actually unsure. Is there any way we can cut to our B match while we're here? This might be a second. Just a little filler time, Norm.
We cannot.
We cannot cut to the B match, I've been told. That's tough. Devin.
Actually shuffling in between games.
B match in game 2, Devin. They're shuffling.
Well, they're shuffling. They're shuffling, but Daniel is not shuffling in their game, so.
Yep. Devin, what's your favorite OTJ card that you can pick up at NRG?
Slick Shot Show Off. Love that card.
That's a banger card. was pretty sweet. It's done really well in basically all the formats. I was curious if it would do well here in Legacy too. Obviously, like Burn isn't really a deck in Legacy anymore, but like the card's strong. It's not like it's weak, Maybe there'd be something kind of crazy. I really like the Lost Judy. That card's really cool. Does some awesome stuff. What's the other one I really like? Oh, Aven Interrupter. I love
That's
Aven
a banger.
Interrupter.
Yeah,
that card is so nice. I played a RCQ yesterday. Had it in my main deck of Amalia. Ooh. It was nice. Just a little one-up.
Yeah, I was thinking about kind of making like some sort of, I don't know, Zorius splash deck with like Spell Queller and Aaron Giada, Aven Interrupter, that kind of stuff. But yeah, a lot of stuff to work on from the set, specifically for, Pioneer Modern. I can't recall if we've really seen any OTJ cards make an impact in Legacy yet. I want to say Satoru has been kind of on people's radar, but I don't know if people have kind of figured out the right shell for it.
Yeah, so true. And then we've seen the Lava Spur Boots, like we talked about earlier. Dom Harvey, some of the land decks are playing that as a one-of to two off the Earth Saga.
Over to B.
So we're going to switch over to B for a second as the players are going to be talking about things for a second. And we have Matthew McGurry on your list with Jameer Death Shadow versus Corey Baldridge on Naya Depths. And it looks like we're going to get a mulligan here. Corey is up a game, and I'm going to take a guess that we put a 2020 into play real quick, or Swords to the Plowshare 2-for-1 disc, and Matthew picked up the cards. Believable in both situations, I think.
Yeah, just the classic Legacy archetype, Jameer Death Shadow. So Corey up a game here with Naya Depths. As you mentioned, so Corey, man, I wanted to feature this deck because there was some really spicy cards in Corey's deck list, specifically one. Not sure if we can get this up on screen, but there, or maybe we should wait. Should we wait and see if there's cast?
We should show the Amazon Prime hit TV show card.
All right. So there were two copies in Corey's deck of Lumbering Mega Sloth. I'm trying to pull it up on Melee, and I can't even see an image, so I'm not sure what set it's from, but it's a 12 mana big creature, and it costs one less for each counter among players and permanents. It's a big trample, enters the battlefield tap. So what's really cool is if you have a Dark Depths in play, Dark Depths has 10 counters on it, which means it discounts the Mega Sloth by 10. So just a 2-mana 8/8.
It's super nice. It's from Fallout, Teffin. It's the Lumbering Mega Sloth. Did you not watch the hit show Fallout on Amazon?
I did not.
Do you have Amazon Prime that you do get a free subscription, which you can use on this channel? That way you don't get any ads. You can't miss any of the action going on here on the NRG series. So make sure to use that Twitch Prime.
I do have Amazon Prime.
If you used it?
Yeah.
On who? Like your free sub.
I don't remember.
Wasn't me. Tell you that. Tell you that, Devin.
Wow, you're just going to call me out like that, huh?
It's fine. We could trade Prime for Prime if you want. No, I actually just refuse. If I'm in a friend's Twitch chat, I ask chat to give me a gifted sub, and I refuse to support them directly. But I will ask for a gifted sub a lot.
I see how it is.
No, it's true. I think it helps encourage, a community of giving, of love.
That's true. That is true.
So,
all right, here we go. Matthew on the play, finding a 5-card hand that he likes, and we're going to go Grief, Pitch, Death Shadow. This is maybe a common play that you're used to in Modern, but it turns out that people still do this in Legacy. Now, they don't typically do it with a Not Dead after all. That's what you're used to in Modern. In Legacy, we get a slightly better version of that one, don't we, Mason?
We do. We get Reanimate, which not only just lets you not have to, commit with it on the board, so maybe get Sword of Plowshare, but also sometimes you just discard your opponent's Grizzlebrand or Atraxa and you reanimate that. Just a good value card that works. Not after all, sometimes you get some value, but it's a little hard, can be finicky. Not Reanimate. You just basically always get your value there.
Yeah, so the Grief is going to go ahead and take care of that Elvish Reclaimer, and we'll see if Matthew has the Reanimate. Does not look like he does, so Corey's going to go ahead and pick up a draw here, or take a draw step here for an Echoing Deeps. And taking a look at the grip, we saw the Swords to Plowshares, the crop rotation, and looks like there's a Wasteland as well. So Matthew, aware of the Wasteland, not going to go ahead and fetch immediately. And we'll have to see what transpires. I want to see if we can maybe get an update on what's happening on match A. I'm guessing if the match A, if that resolution had finished, then we'd probably go back there, but
still judges are still trying to figure out what's going to happen, how it's going to play out.
So judges are still figuring out what's happening. And, I'm personally of the belief, and this is for the judges to figure out, that it was all a little accident. And I'm sure, the stuff's going to figure out the right way, but we do have to sort of do the due diligence investigation, as it were. As Matthew is going to swamp cycle for an underground sea. That's probably one that players aren't, if you haven't been keeping up with Legacy, this might be a bit of a surprise, but even here it's great, especially when you combine it with the reanimate we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. So there's
Daniel
that troll
was
going to the
issued
graveyard.
a game loss, and they are now moving to sideboards.
All right, so we have an update in game number 1 of Connor versus Daniel. Unfortunately, Daniel did see too many cards, and it is going to end up being a game loss. It was a hidden card error multiple times, and so they are moving to game number 2 in sideboarding.
And you can talk
We're gonna
about deck lists.
We're gonna cut away from this match, I guess, and come back to the booth here. We're gonna talk about that main feature match. Let's take a look over at the sideboards here, and we'll start with Daniel since he is down a game. He is playing Sneak and Show, and funny enough, Daniel might have an idea of what Connor is on between all the errors and the 80 cards. So if you saw a couple of those cards, Devin, what might your approach be? Because, honestly, you see Yorion, you kind of know what it is, right? It's a value pile. You don't play Yorion in your combo deck. So how might you approach this if you're a Daniel here?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of hit the nail on the head there. Once you see the Yorion, it especially, honestly, the dead giveaway might be the Xander's Lounge, because who in their right mind would put Xander's Lounge in their legacy deck? But in any case, yeah, Daniel is going to want to look towards ways to kind of fight over the counter spells. So the thing is, there's not a lot of counter spells on Connor's side. So you could go to something like Defense Grid, but that's only fighting over Force of Will. Maybe you expect other counter spells on Connor's side of things. The Grafdigger's Cages, the Brotherhood's Ends, the Echoing Truce, and the Surgicals probably not going to come in. Pyroblast, again, to also fight over Force of Will. That could be of pretty good assistance here for Daniel. And then lastly, those Magus of the Moons. Once you see Xander's Lounge, you know that Magus of the Moon is probably just knockout, game over against Connor.
Counterpoint, you saw a force too, though. So
you
know
there's something basic.
Yeah, no, jokes aside, I do like the idea of that, and it's interesting in Defense Grid because it's weirdly, in my mind, going to be maybe better against like Leyline Binding to protect your Sneak and Show, right? Because you'll probably play it, and then it kind of like forces a binding on Connor's turn so that he can then lead up his forces. Or if he goes for a binding, it has to be a billion mana. So we'll have to see how it goes there. Those players are ready. It looks like we have presented each other the deck, and we are drawing up for game number 2 here.
Yeah, very unfortunate here for Daniel. But, we got 2 more games, Daniel. And I do think Daniel is maybe favored in the matchup. Like we said, Connor just didn't, especially game 1, Connor doesn't have a lot of, ways to kind of fight on the stack. Has those Force of Wills, but really that's it. We didn't get a chance to take a look at Connor's sideboard, but just kind of rolling over it quickly here. We have 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Carpet of Flowers, and then a whole bunch of 1-ofs. 1 Blue Blast, 1 Doorkeeper Throw, 1 Force Negation, a Hydro Blast, a Meltdown, a Pyroblast, a Red Blast, a Terminus, a Veil Summer, and a Yorion. Say that 10 times fast. The cards that I like here for Connor, you have the blue. Well, that's if Connor knows what his opponent's even playing. He can see a lot of cards, right?
Let's go back to this is what Connor's got. We'll see what he brings in. I'd bring in a carpet, 80 cards. Why not? They're probably playing blue. It's Legacy. They're X and 1. By the way, that voice you can hear in the background to talking to us sometimes, that is Norm, who apparently y'all check in here. It's nice that Norm gets to join us in the booth. Just thought we'd give a name to the nameless voice you're hearing.
This is Norm's ploy. He wants people to hear him, so they're, so we get the follower goal, so then he gets the punishment, which we haven't discussed yet. But
yes, yeah. Let's just say Norm might have some wild hair at the end of it all. As we are going to see a Surveil land for Connor. I just love seeing the meticulous archive next to the Xander's Lounge. Yeah. It's just so good. It's probably good too. That's the crazy part. It's probably just actually right to play.
Yeah, Xander's Lounge, Meticulous Archive. I'm scanning to see if there's other tap lands. It looks like those are there's a Thundering Falls too. So 3 total tap lands in Connor's deck. And the reason they're all islands is because there's also a copy of Mystic Sanctuary.
Mystic Sanctuary is a nice card. That is one that, got banned in Modern, a short-ish time after its release. And it is very powerful there. And it is, as you can only imagine, incredibly powerful in Legacy, especially in fair games.
Yeah, and Daniel going for his own copy of Thundering Falls. Both players just, I thought we were watching Legacy Mason, but apparently we're now playing Modern.
Yeah. I like the Thundering Falls from Daniel because so much of what the Sneak and Show deck does in the early turns, right, is like cast cantrips and sort of just sculpt. So this sort of lets you like wait and see a bit more of your opponent's stuff sometimes, see what they're up to, and then kind of sculpt with your fetch and then sculpt again and set up for that big turn 3.
Yep, we see a ponder here for Daniel. Like you mentioned, really just want to try to find the A plus B. And what's nice about Daniel's deck is there's more A's. There's basically 8 copies of A and 8 copies of B. You have I guess 7 creatures in the form of 4 Atraxa and 3 Emrakul, and then the other half being the 4 Sneak Attack and the 4 Show and Tell. So the 2 Omniscience as well. So I guess there's 9 and 8 in terms of the A plus B kind of thing.
Here's Connor's play. This play won in the game last time. It's an Up the Beanstalk. Let's see how it does here. As he is going to get to draw a card if it resolves. Daniel does have a Force of Will and Brainstorm in hand. Up the Beanstalk, another card that got banned in Modern. So powerful with cards like Leyline Binding and the Evoke Elementals and Force of Will here in Legacy. And it looks like, Daniel doesn't want to fight that fight. He is just going to take down this Beanstalk. And I kind of like this from Daniel, You talk about how Connor doesn't have a lot of cards that really matter in this sort of matchup.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so here's the thing. Daniel's thinking about if Connor has Force of Will, Connor's going to want to try to Force of Will my Show and Tell or my Sneak Attack or whatever. And you're kind of in a position where if you let the Beanstalk resolve, you're giving Connor back the card. And then if Connor does have the Force, you're giving Connor another card, which digs him more to those forces. And, from Daniel's side of things, he's like, okay, well, if I just have 2 big payoffs, I make Connor Force of Will the first one. He doesn't get the extra card, and that doesn't get him closer to the second Force of Will.
Mm-hmm. They're going to see a shuffle of Ponder. The normal outcome.
Yeah, Daniel going ahead and shuffling the deck. I couldn't quite get a good glimpse of what the leftovers are. I think I saw a red card. Might be a Sneak Attack. And, potentially looking for some fast mana, maybe like an Ancient Tomb to be able to deploy that Sneak Attack ahead of schedule. And there's that Ancient Tomb. Ooh.
And that Petal. Playing around
days.
Attack you.
Okay. So we're tapping out for Sneak Attack. Daniel has already made his land drop. Now, taking a look at Connor's deck list, do we have outs to the Sneak Attack? So looking at the mana base, no copies of Beseiju. Looking at the enchantments, we have Binding. 4 copies of Leyline Binding. We'll have to see, and see if Connor has. There was a Hydroblast on the board if that came in as well.
Yeah. Looks like Connor drawn 3 cards. Got another Brainstorm, so has another look.
Yeah, and made sure to leave on the white source on tap so that if you do find a fetch land, you can go fetch for Xander's Lounge and then 1 mana Binding. Connor
also has a Solitude in hand, so obviously, these things that enter the battlefield are incredibly powerful, but like Atraxa doesn't like do as much as like a Grizzlebrand would, right? Like it used to, this deck would just Grizzlebrand you. But Daniel just playing a couple Emrakuls and a couple of Atraxas means that, we might put Atraxa in and we might not actually find the thing. I'm not even sure if Daniel has a payoff in hand, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this is just, Daniel might have a cantrip left over and was going to say, okay, well, this is the turn that I want to try to resolve the Sneak Attack. I can now untap, have access to more mana, use my island to cast the cantrip, and then try to find a creature from there. And you see Connor fetching that Xander's Lounge. I think there might be a Binding, and there is.
Yep. And that's pretty huge there for Connor Mullaly. It's going to remove all the pressure there from Daniel. He needs to have something like Show and Tell plus the big card in hand, but unfortunately, just as a Scalding Tarn, it's going to play it pretty quickly and pass the turn there. Connor taking some time to shuffle those 80 cards.
Yeah, Daniel only on 1 card left in hand. Not quite sure what it is. If the Sneak Attack, like you said, if the Sneak Attack was cast, potentially it could be a large creature, maybe something like an Atraxa or an Emrakul. But Daniel just kind of running out of gas here. Maybe needs to find something like a Brainstorm to help refuel the hand, gas back up a little bit. And Connor is just, doing some cantripping and sculpting his hand.
Yep, Daniel is representing hard cast Force of Will here with 5 mana up.
True.
But if that's the case, Connor's feeling pretty happy about what's going on, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Looks like Connor looking at a grip of Beanstalk, Solitude, second Brainstorm, and I think also second Leyline Binding. So Connor's hand is just stacked with interaction. Can maybe, fetch away 2 cards that he doesn't want off the Brainstorm, perhaps cast the second Brainstorm next turn, dig a little bit deeper. Connor has enough answers to the point where he can let the game go on for a relatively long time, doesn't really have to try to get the game over with quickly. And we're going to go ahead and Beanstalk. So like to one of the cards, because had the Misty Rainforest in hand, could have fetched away before the Beanstalk. So if he wanted one of those cards. And Daniel does find a Brainstorm.
Yep. This powerful card is how you come back. That's honestly part of the reason I was so surprised to see Daniel slam the fetch so quickly. Is could have held it for the Brainstorm as a material to shuffle away. Where let Connor have a little bit less info, but looks like we do have a Force of Will in hand. That might have been in our hand last turn. We just didn't want to hard cast over the bean. But one thing that I like about these control decks we've seen from like the modern era, like the 5-colory decks, is they kind of just do this a lot, where they run the opponent out of resources and they kind of just keep picking like one little fight over and over as they kill you. So Connor really just needs to work on the killing Daniel part. He has everything kind of locked up. He has the card advantage, but he just doesn't have a clock to put pressure on Daniel.
Yeah, I think one of Connor's best clocks is probably the Triumph of St. Catherine. Also has something like, Uro, Solitude, or Uro and Orcish Bowmasters, rather, that could help get the game over with quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the cards he's looking for. And found the Tropical Island. Deck is 5 colors, but, predominantly Bant.
Now, Mason, while we have Connor take a little fetch here, I'm going to ask you a question. So I don't know if you've been in this position before. I know I have a couple of times, but when it comes to tournament Magic, game losses, unfortunate, they do happen from time to time. How does that affect your mental state?
I mean, I don't know. I'm expected to lose stuff. It's on me. I typically tell people in coaching, and I bring up to you have the rest of your life to be mad. You have about 45 minutes to, undo your error. And just because you have a game loss doesn't mean you're going to lose the match, right? In this situation, Daniel's probably pretty favored in this matchup, at least in the early turns. And so while things might be slowly getting out of reach here, it's still something you can get out of. And you're just here to play the best Magic you can. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. I honestly believe Daniel really did make a dexterity error. It'd be more malicious if he did it twice. If he saw two cards, right? Like that's actually more suspicious to me than what actually happened, which would just obviously get you a game loss. So I see Twitch chat won't let it go. Just think about it, guys, since we do see an Uro coming down here for Connor. That's my approach. I don't know about you, Devin.
No, yeah, you've kind of echoed my exact sentiment, where it's just one of those things where stuff happens, unfortunate. It's sort of out of your control. You are kind of at the mercy of the judges and what their decision is. And, it's one of those things that you just kind of have to shake it off. Like you said, there's always more tournaments and there's always more turns as we see a sneak attack, and that's an Atraxa, Mason.
Yeah, well, if you're Connor, you're not happy about this sequence of events, but you're not unhappy, as it could have been an Emrakul, which would have probably been game over for Connor. He does have a Solitude in hand, though. We're going to see this Atraxa trigger go on the stack. Connor has a Solitude. He might want to fight over it now, because if he does, there can't be a Force of Will get off the top there from Daniel.
Yeah, I think the awkward part here for Connor is that he has Solitude Binding, but no additional white card. So he kind of has to either choose to Solitude or Binding, or potentially rip the white card off of the Beanstalk.
Love this from Connor. We have gone for the Leyline Binding on the sneak attack. Yep. That way, if Daniel hits the Emrakul, it might get show and tell on a later turn, but we at least have a little bit more time. And with our deck, if we get more time, we can get out of this. And one Atraxa hit is honestly not the end of the world, as it does look like we've seen an Emrakul as one of the cards and a show and tell. We got a City of Traitors as well, another show and tell and a Brainstorm at the top. I imagine we're going to see that Emrakul go into hand unless there's something clever we can do with the Spirit Guide this turn. We do see the Emrakul grab pretty quickly. That Scalding Tarn wasn't played before. City of Traitors picked up. Show and tell is picked up.
It's instant sorcery creature land, and we see the 2 copies of Brotherhood's End did come in here for Daniel. So I wonder if there's a specific card that he had in mind with those cards. And, to see the Brainstorm, the show and tell, the City of Traitors, and the Emrakul. I believe Daniel has already played his land for turn, ?
I believe he has not, because we had 5 men on the previous turn.
Oh, right. Okay.
Force.
Yep.
Yeah, so we can Traitors into show and tell. Now that will allow Connor to put in the Solitude, which I believe hits the Emrakul.
It does. Yep.
Yeah, so Connor kind of weirdly has it covered. Had Daniel picked up, Force Will or something, another blue card of some kind, that would have been a problem. Like Omniscience had been revealed. Maybe, Daniel could scrape enough together over the course of multiple turns, but.
Yeah, and with Daniel fetching, it looks like he is going to potentially at least, lining up the fact that he's going to go for the show and tell here. And, we both know at home, and you all know at home, that it's not going to work out well for Daniel because that Emrakul is going to get solituded. Now, there is still a Brainstorm left over if that does happen, so Daniel can maybe try to find some action next turn. And Daniel just giving it a little bit of a think here. So it looks like we are potentially lining up just an attack. Okay, not going to go for the show and tell. Pretty disciplined play here for Daniel. Or just going to do a post-combat. Okay.
I really like this because it's not like it really matters when you do it, and maybe Connor gets anxious and like solitudes the Atraxa,
Sure. Yep.
We are going to see the solitude get put in. They're both in play. Get God Emrakul. Gain 15, Daniel. And that's going to go to the graveyard. And we know Daniel just has a Brainstorm left in hand, and Connor Mullaly has the Solitude in play to start regaining life and has Uro in the graveyard, which Uro, if you've ever played against it, wins games very, very quickly. That cycle of Titans from Theros Beyond Death are very strong.
Yeah, Daniel, got a little bit of a life buffer from that Solitude, is at 35, but 35 going to 32 this turn. The Uro plus Solitude could potentially represent 9 damage, and Connor's going to go for a Fable instead here, leaving up some additional mana. And, like we said, Daniel doesn't have a lot left over, but Brainstorm is probably the single best card that he could have left over.
Yep. I like this from Connor, too. If you've got, some stuff that you might want to cast up, might as well just develop this Fable, get it on to the battlefield.
All right, here we go. Daniel's going to go digging. Do we find way to put creature into play plus creature? Preferably, Daniel looking for ideally sneak attack, because that one at least has the most immediate impact. Can give it haste and whatnot. So we'll have to see if Daniel did find sneak attack plus perhaps an Emrakul.
Looks like we are tanking, which probably means we have something okay. It might be a situation where we have like a couple good cards in a ponder, and we're figuring out if we're supposed to like ponder this turn, so we're thinking through everything. This is one of the things about Legacy Chat is there's a lot of interesting and enticing gameplay, but a lot of it actually happens before it starts happening because there's a lot of planning and then executing.
Yeah, and then like you mentioned, there's so many different permutations and things that could happen with a card like Brainstorm that you just have to really think about not only what you're going to do this turn, but then also what you're going to do the next turn and the turn after and the turn after. There's a lot of things to think about with Brainstorm.
Yep. Well, Connor's going to untap. Looks like the top 2 cards. Put back there from Daniel, and we're going to see a tick up of Fable, the Mirror Breaker. That is Connor on the token there.
Oh, yeah.
When he and his friends won the showdown. You get this by going to our events. Makes you wonder if Connor has 2 of those for that reason.
It's a nice flex, just like playing. And I wonder if Connor, because I think Fable the Mirror Breaker is not particularly common in these Legacy decks. And I wonder if Connor is like, I was going to play this 5-color deck, but I really want to play these Fables just so I can put my own token into play.
Yeah, I like that. It makes, it is a good card. How wrong can it even be?
Yeah.
It does look like we're going to play a Bayou for turn.
What's Uro time?
There it goes. Yep. And if you're Daniel, something's up, right? Like last turn, Connor could have played this Uro, didn't, left up the exact same 2 lands. This turn, Connor does it again.
Yeah, and what could 2 lands even represent here? Because there's no copy of Counterspell, 1 mana for binding. There is a Doorkeeper Thrall in Connor's sideboard. I don't know, again, if he knew the matchup, but if he did know the matchup, that potentially could have come in to shut off the Atraxa ETB.
Yep. It's true. It might also just be a situation where Connor has, like you mentioned, just like binding plus something, like a Brainstorm, whatever, to look for a force. It's like an Echoing Truth on the Leyline bindings.
Oh, that's insane, because that's going to get him back the sneak attack. What was under it's just 2 sneak attacks,
It's the sneak attacks, yeah.
Okay.
And Connor does have the mana to fight over it. It's weird, though. I think Connor is just, as the kids would also say, Gucci about it.
Yeah, because he's going to draw 4 cards.
Yeah, Connor's going to draw a bunch of cards, but also Daniel can't really kill him, right? Like the Atraxas can just get bindinged. You can't double Emrakul. And what are you going to do? Sacrifice, like, I got this treasure token. I got these beanstalks, It's not perfect. You're not excited if you're Connor.
Yeah, and then And now Connor can even run back the same thing, right? With the Atraxa ETB on the stack, he can just go binding, sneak attack, and even if there's an Emrakul found, it looks like Connor's not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and just wait on the Atraxa reveal, see what is found off of this. So if that's the case, I wonder if Connor is thinking about saving the bindings for the creatures, like you mentioned.
Yeah, some of them are off camera, but we can see an Emrakul right away, along with, I believe, an Omniscience as one of those cards, and a Lotus Petal. So I imagine Lotus Petal's going to go to hand, not a ton of artifacts, unless Daniel has a sideboard one. I imagine we're probably going to see this Emrakul go to hand. There is an Atraxa, though, so that could be something to pick. Yeah, they're going to push on the screen for us. Thank you so much for that. Show and tell, another one of the cards.
Yeah, this is massive because Daniel knows about those leyline bindings. And I think Daniel's best way around the binding is show and tell Omniscience Emrakul. So you can, and it looks like Daniel is selecting the show and tell and the Omniscience because you can imagine there's a situation where Daniel goes show and tell, puts in Omniscience. Connor does not have a window to get the binding the Omniscience before it resolves.
He does. He puts in his binding off the show and tell.
And there's a trigger. Okay, good point.
So all Connor has to do is just not. He needs to hold one binding, and I think he kind of has it locked up. He's going to lose like 6 permanents. He's going to lose 15 life. It's not going to be pretty, but he is alive, I think.
Well, that's if Daniel decides to go for the show and tell. The other thing Daniel could do is just sneak attack in the Emrakul, but Connor's okay with that because then you could just cast the binding on the Emrakul.
Exactly, yeah. Listen, this is not the MH3 Emrakul, all right? It can get affected by stuff.
So we'll have to see how Daniel decides to go about this. You know, I think with the information that Connor has the bindings, I think Daniel, well, I guess if you know the binding is face up, then you know your show and tell's not good, right? Because if you show and tell, Connor just puts in the binding and you don't have a window to cast the Emrakul. So he is going to go for sneak attack.
It also just occurred to me that maybe Legacy is going to play the new Emrakul. I had only been thinking about it in modern context, recently. But it would be really good here if you took control of all Connor's creatures. So we are going to see a Leyline binding, 2 beam triggers.
Yep. All right. 2 cards here for Connor. We have to imagine the binding is going after the Emrakul, which it is. Now, Daniel does have a window to activate sneak attack again if there is a second Emrakul. We know there's an Atraxa. But the Atraxa would not be able to find another Emrakul because there's only one additional red source left. So if you activate the sneak attack, you then don't have colored mana to activate the sneak attack again, even if an Emrakul is found.
Yeah. And then Atraxa's going to hit for 7. Connor's going to fall 16. Daniel going to go up to 34. Connor, though, with Solitude and Uro, is just going to basically be back to where we started next turn. We also have this Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is about to flip, and then we'll be 1 turn away from just being able to make a Solitude every turn. So the door is really closing on Daniel.
Yeah, now that that's actually a good point. I didn't think about the Fable Solitude, but that might be close to a hard lock against Daniel. Like, I'm not really sure, there's not really much in the way of removal. Although, now that I say that, we did see those Brotherhood's ends come in, and maybe that's why Daniel brought them in for this exact situation, right? If, Connor flips the Fable the Mirror Breaker, Daniel rips a Brotherhood's end off the top, that clears the Fable and the Solitude.
Looks like Connor has a smoked sleeve Fable. You hate to see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you, Mason, but I don't love the smoke inners.
I don't love the smoke inners. The great people at Ultimate Guard there in the bottom right, proud sponsor of the stream, they got sleeves where you can't see through the back of them. Might as well just use those katanas for that. As they are going to see an attack here for 11 from Connor, gaining 6 life between lifelink and the Uro trigger. Is also going to net Connor another card. And you were talking about how, Daniel's running out of threats. I took a look over here. We have 2 more Atraxas and 1 more Emrakul than the Simian Spirit Guide, and then we're out of ways to hit, which means Daniel, if Connor can just Solitude the last Emrakul, he won't die to Atraxa. It can't be hard cast in this position.
Right. Yeah. There's only 3 copies of Emrakul in Daniel's deck, and one of them is under the binding. One of them has been exiled already to Solitude. And there, I believe, so there's, I guess the way around that would be there are 2 Echoing Truths, but you're not really ever going to get Connor in a position where he's going to tap out and you go end step Echoing Truth, gotcha, untap attack with Emrakul. So, that's kind of off the table.
Connor's just spending 5 on something. Is that a Triumph of St. Catherine?
It is. Also, Trigger Beanstalk, by the way.
Trigger Beanstalk. Pull up Triumph of Saint Catherine for me coverage so we can talk about this one. This is from old Warhammer 40k. It's a banger and recently hit Magic Online. It's 5 mana for a 5/5 lifelink. And when it basically when this thing dies, it goes like 7 from the top, and then you can miracle it.
Well, you shuffle in, right?
It's no, you exile. Yeah, sorry, you exile in the top 6. Yeah, and then it's always 7th for me, Devin. I've never had it on the next turn. I would never even.
Yeah, no, this card is really sick because it being a 2 mana. So what's really nice about it is it is somewhat hard to kill, right? Especially against Delver, where all their removal is Unholy Heat and Bolt. So against that particular deck, they really can't ever kill it because if they kill it, it goes back. And it's also sick with Brainstorm because you can just Brainstorm, put it on top, next turn, cast it for 2 mana off of the Miracle, and then that still also triggers your Beanstalk. And just a way to close the game out, gain some life back against the aggressive matchups. Just a phenomenal card.
We are going to see a ponder here from Daniel. And Connor Mullaly dangerously close from locking this game up. We talked about before that Fable the Mirror Breaker is on the next turn going to be able to activate, creating copies of things like Solitude, making it pretty hard for Daniel to ever really push through.
Yeah, I was gonna say Daniel needs to find a copy of the Brotherhood's Ends, but even at that point, there's still the Uro and the Triumph of St. Catherine, so not out of the woods. Even if we do find a copy of Brotherhood's End, but yeah, that show and tell is hitting the stack here. See if Connor wants to respond, but as we mentioned, there's only 1 copy of Emrakul left in Daniel's deck because there's only 3 total. So it's a situation of for casting show and tell we already have the sneak attacks in place, so you have to imagine we're going for an Omniscience, and Connor is going to fight over that show and tell.
Yeah, we're going to see that Force Negation. We also know Connor has 1 Leyline Binding in hand, so the Omniscience won't even get to cast a spell. We went for a double show and tell line, which is maybe the line we went for here. Looks like we're tapping some mana for something. Looks like it is a sneak attack to put in the 3rd Atraxa. Give it up for 3rd Atraxa.
So, okay, refresh my memory. So that the Emrakul's 1 Underbinding, 1 in exile. Where are the other 2 Atraxas? Are they in the graveyard from sneak attack?
I believe both are in the graveyard from some sneak attacks. As it looks like Magus of the Moon was put into Daniel's deck. We talked about sideboarding. That might do something. Force Connor to activate his Fable on the Magus.
The Magus, yeah, I mean, like you said, the Magus is a decent find, but Connor does have the Fable plus Solitude already lined up. So not really going to be good enough here for Daniel. Needed to find that Brotherhood's End to clean up the Fable and the Solitude. But we do find, there's the Brotherhood's End. Okay, we did find it.
Yeah, and if Connor can't answer, that could be a problem. On the other side, Connor is drawing as many cards as Daniel is every turn. And dealing about as much damage as Daniel is too. So it's really going to be the first one running out of steam.
Is Triumph of St. Catherine, is that legendary? I don't think it is. Let me look it up again.
I believe not.
Because it's not legendary, so you can copy that with Fable. You probably wouldn't want to here, but you could.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to fetch for Daniel now. Does not have the requisite red sources to be able to cast Brotherhood's End this turn, but maybe is going to lead on Magus. I almost like holding the Magus because about the Fable Solitude, and next turn you can just go Brotherhood's End and then Magus before, you know what I mean? So you can kill the Solitude before the Magus hits the battlefield. So we'll see what Daniel wants to do.
Yep. We did lose our City of Traitors to do this, so also even cost us there.
We're going to sneak attack, so potentially another Atraxa here.
I mean, if you're Connor, it just doesn't really matter. You have these 2 treasures still. Like, if he goes to attack, you just binding the Atraxa. Even if he has Annihilate 6, what's he going to do? Make you sack some stuff?
Yeah, Connor could just sacrifice 6 lands at this point. It wouldn't even matter. Like, we get 2 treasures. We got the Fable token making treasures. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Sack the Triumph of St. Catherine. You don't even really need it. You really just need Uro. Like,
Yeah.
Uro, maybe one of the beanstalks. Ooh,
I love
sunflower
this.
plains.
This is a cool interaction. So Connor knew about the Magus, and Daniel activated sneak attack, and Connor was like, I'm going to respond and fetch my basic just in case you want to sneak attack in that Magus. Love that play.
Yep, very tight play there from Connor. It is funny. If the Magus had hit play 2, Connor would have exactly enough mana to cast Binding because he'd have a mountain and a plains. So he would have 2. I guess he has the island. So his Binding would cost 3 mana. But yeah, it's very funny. So we are going to see a Leyline Binding come down here. I imagine this is beginning of combat.
Yeah, and that is the last Emrakul. So we have 1 in exile from Solitude, and then 2. So yeah, Daniel does have to fight over this because Daniel knows that is the last copy of Emrakul. So we'll see if Connor has a Forcible to help fight. And Veil of Summer, that'll do the job.
Yep, and it looks like this is all in response to the Beam Trigger. So we're going to draw a card from the Veil of Summer, then draw 2 cards from the Up the Beanstalk trigger. Now we're going to take that Emrakul. Smart of Connor to bring in Veil of Summer and Legacy. Opponent's doing well. They might be on a blue or a black deck.
True.
Heads up play.
Yeah, we talked over that a little bit, but we didn't bring it up a ton. But these players maybe didn't know exactly what their opponents were playing because of that awkward situation game 1. So Daniel bringing in Brotherhood's End, which maybe he wouldn't want to against like a 5-color beans deck, and then Connor may be a little unsure as well.
Connor's having 8 mana. I have no clue what it costs this much.
Oh, 4th.
A 4th Aerolingus.
Yeah, it's got to be.
That is a game.
For 6? So 6, 12. That's 12, 17, 23, 25, 28, 30. I count 30 damage.
I think it could be less than lethal, and Connor would still win, as we are going to see Daniel extend the hand there. So congratulations, Connor Mullaly. Again, moving on to 6-1 with 1 more round left in the Swiss. We're going to see if Connor's going to play it out or if he'll be able to draw in. We'll find out more there, but he is wanting to get back to our Players' Championship this year. Off to a strong start so far, so good to see him there. We're going to be taking a quick 2-minute, we're going to take a quick couple-minute break, excuse me. There's a minute left in the round going on today, so we're going to finish up that round and be right back with some more Legacy action. Make sure to click that follow button. That way you don't miss any of the upcoming events. And we're going to be finishing out, by the way, the entire tournament today, me and Devin with you. So we have 1 more round of Swiss and the entirety of the top 8. Stay tuned.